Hey everyone, Normal American Show, Rob Norm. Or wait, I forgot. On Notice with RobGPT. What's up, everyone? Got a little trim today. Been busy. Hope everyone's doing great. My face looks less fat without the scruffy beard. So, and then I got the. When you're balding, you just gotta go with it. Just, you know. So, looking good, right? Gray shirt, gray hat to match the gray in my beard. Hope everyone's having a great day. I am. We're gonna get started. We're doing a call-in show today. Lot of comments lately. This shitty Rob, shitty debater, gaslighter, AI bullier. Oh, he's shit. He's the worst. He's a MAGA. He's an AI bully. Blah, blah, blah. He's on notice. He's terrible. He's defaming people. Well, let's do it. Now's your chance. Call in. Have your opinion heard. Put me on notice. Let's do it. It will be a good show. I think so. Now, I have a hard 7:45 cutoff time. So we got 2 hours. That's it. That's what I have for tonight. Not that I'm doing anything out of the ordinary tonight. What I'm doing is having dinner with my wife and my son. So it's running a little late. And we decided that if I just stream now and get the 2 hours over with, that'll give me time to hang out with the family this evening. Now, I know what you might be thinking. But Rob, should we be watching you or should we be preparing for Dylan Burns' fantastic hippy dippy show tonight that's going to line up the team of Pisco, Hutch, those people, you know, that do their normal show against some good people like Lactoid. And it's going to be talking about like politics that's coming up. Well, you've already seen that debate. You remember back in the day, I'm a fan of old wrestling, like 1990s wrestling. You remember like in the Monday Night Wars, you had WCW versus WWF or WWE, whatever they want to call it. And there was an episode where WCW Nitro on Monday nights would film live, and WWF sometimes would be pre-recorded. And so it was when the wrestler Mankind was going to win the belt in WWF, and the announcers for Nitro was like, "Don't turn the channel. Don't turn the channel. That guy Mankind's going to win the belt, so stay here." And then what happened was everyone turned the channel. Well, I'm going to make the same mistake tonight. No need to go to the hippy dippy. Don't turn the channel to hippy dippy. Here's what's going to happen. The left-wingers are going to talk about January 6th and how Trump and Vance are a threat to democracy. There you go. I just saved you 2 hours. The end. Democracy. Oh! I did. I cut my beard. Bottom surgery scheduled for next Monday. So, should be good. Anyways. Oh, we already got people lined up. So, I'll remind people again. I know how it is. It takes time for people to get into the show. But I will remind people what the rules of engagement are here. Depending on how many people call in, I might cut your time short, so don't take offense to that. But if 10 people want to call in, I can't talk to the first person for an hour. It's just not going to go that way. Some people will get more times than others based on sort of how the engagement's going. Any topic is fine by me. However, it has to be within terms of service. So if you want to call in and express your displeasure of certain racial groups, sexual orientations, religions, people from certain areas of the country, like Cleveland, that you just want to shit on. If it's outside the scope of terms of service, we may have to put the kibosh on that. So we got to keep it within terms of service. It is my show, so I do reserve the right to talk over you if I feel that that's something that's necessary. I'm most interested in people that want to disagree with me, preferably talking about political issues that are relevant going into the election. But as I said, it's your show, so we'll talk about whatever the audience wants. Other than that, pretty much anything's a go. I will remind people of that again as we get more people that want to call in. Other than that, we're going to jump right to it. Things I would like to talk about, particularly if anyone wants to disagree, is the appearance that the Kamala Harris campaign is sort of falling apart, how she's been driven out from under the curtain to the public eye, and how she's doing terrible in all of these recent performances. Her lack of ability to answer even the most basic of questions, and maybe things related to the hurricane. Anything else that people want to talk about, I guess. Let's go to the phone lines. It's not really phone. So far, we have one caller on the hook. One caller already, minutes into the show. Now, again, I'll remind you, it doesn't matter if 5 minutes before, with very few exceptions, at 7:45, I'm out of here. Now, if Trump calls in at 7:40, maybe I'll stick around for an extra 10 minutes. But that's it. So I don't want to hear any whining, complaining when the lefty that wants to call in 5 minutes before my show ends says, "Oh, Rob rage quit. He rage quit." I'm telling you right now, 7:45 is the cutoff. If someone calls in and has a big dispute with me that they want sorted out, and it's 5 minutes till the end of the show, I will happily set up a time in the near future where we can talk about it at length for hours and hours. In fact, not only am I not running from people that disagree with me, that's actually the people I want to talk to. I actually feel uncomfortable and not as entertained when people call in and say, "I agree with you." To me, that's usually boring. So that's what's going on. But we'll get right to the calls here. Let's do it. Emmett, sir, what's happening? You're first on. How you doing today?
Doing good. I don't have much time, so I'll be brief. I wanna. Is it possible? Can I curse on your stream?
Yeah. No
I
racial
just want to
slurs or
say
anything, but
no, it's not against you. I just want to say fuck you to Tom Foolery for putting me on notice yesterday.
oh, he put
Uh,
you on notice too? Shit.
yeah,
There's a
I've
lot of that
noticed.
going around.
I just want to say fuck him. I just want to say fuck you to you, Tom.
We'll set up a debate. I'll moderate between you two. What was the argument about FEMA?
It was about FEMA. He was saying that I asked him point blank if he think Elon was lying. He was like, well, I don't know. And I was like, well, if you don't know, you can shut up. Because if you're going to go ahead and come with, well, I am ignorant about the topic, you cannot make an actual argument about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Uh,
in general, I was saying this yesterday, so I'll just be brief with
yeah,
this, but certainly there are specific accusations that people are making that are probably untrue. And it's difficult. It's very difficult in the world we live in today to point to a specific accusation. This person said, "I'm on the ground and I saw this." Did they? I don't know. But in general, I think that it's fair game to bring up sort of perceived failures, particularly like that caller called in and showed sort of where the priorities of FEMA have been, and so tend to see
yeah.
people still struggling. I think it's fair game. Particularly, I'm just guessing, if I went back and looked at Tom Foolery streams circa 2020, I'll bet he had an awful lot to say negative about Trump and COVID. Bet he had a lot to say about that. I bet he wasn't saying, well, they're trying the best they can, and let's be hesitant in politicizing it, et cetera, et cetera. So I find those people to be the most hilarious, that demand, when they use a standard, successfully, might I add, attacking Trump in 2020, that same game can no longer be applied to the people they agree with. So
I would also say that I will say that I believe Elon. He might be exaggerating a little bit. It seemed like a very harsh tweet. But I mean, he did send aid to those places, and he was trying to set up.
I'm sure that he did. And again, if I'm playing devil's advocate, right? And again, I don't agree with this position necessarily, but I do think that there is an argument to be had that if you are, let's say, law enforcement, which FEMA isn't,
Yeah.
I understand that, but if you're law enforcement and you can't just have anyone coming into an area like, hey, we're going to do it. We're going to rescue people. We're going to do this, because then it might make the situation worse, etc. So I could see in theory why there would be a governmental policy like, but listen, even though you're a wealthy billionaire that means well, you can't just come in and start doing things on your own. You have to go through proper channels, so we can't let you in. Now, having said that, I would think that they're brutally inefficient and corrupt, and probably would screw things up like this, where people on the ground would probably be doing a better job, like someone of Elon Musk's wealth or other people. I know there is plenty. It's not covered as much as it should. One name that comes to mind, have you ever heard of the term like the Cajun Navy? These were volunteers in like places like Louisiana where there'd be hurricanes and stuff. Just volunteers with no government affiliation that would go and try to rescue people on boats they had. I think groups like that actually are doing quite a lot of good. And I think it would be a shame if government entities prevent them from doing that good. So I get what you're saying. I really do. And I get what Elon's saying there. And I do believe Elon's not lying about trying to send resources there. I believe that's true. But I can see the other side saying, well, for reasons we can't just let you go on alone. I just think that the overwhelming truth is that FEMA is despicable. They have an agenda that is not designed to do what their job should be, which should be helping people in the effects of natural disasters. It's more about DEI and other shit. And that there's been all sorts of exploitation with those funds, whether it be giving it to illegal migrants, even if that's a different pool of money, or if it's been fraudulent money being spent to things like COVID, even in this year in 2024, that when you need an agency like that, it ends up failing spectacularly. And I think that that's the truth of what's going on.
I would say that my only pushback on that is I believe him and the Trump team were working towards trying to help. I don't know what channels they were doing, but I'm willing to say that he's not just a wealthy person that was trying to help. That he was trying to go to proper channels and everything.
He may have been. And again, yeah. I don't know the specifics. Again, I'm not here to defend FEMA. I'm not. I think they're shit.
Yeah.
You know.
No, I do understand your argument. I was just pushing back a little bit against that argument, saying
I'm just trying to be as fair as possible. Is what I'm trying to do. But I also well know that that's not the game they'll play. They don't give a shit. They weren't charitable with COVID with Trump. They didn't give a shit. Everything was his fault. They weren't charitable with Trump with the riots that were occurring all across the nation. Didn't give a shit. So I'm not like them. I try my best to hold myself to my own standard. I really do. And it's always funny to me to watch them lament when the same sort of standards that they wish to hold other people are then held against them or the people they like. So I will not listen to them say that I must have a cool head or be careful of like what I'm saying. Screw them. They'll say any innuendo or rumor that's negative to the people they don't like. But I'm just, for my audience and for myself, I'm trying to be as even-handed as possible. So,
the other thing is, yesterday during the town hall, apparently Kamala was using the teleprompter the full time.
Mm-hmm. So that's the allegation, and it may well be true. The counter that I've heard was that the teleprompter was in Spanish and was for the host. It was not for Kamala Harris. Now, the pushback against that would be, it does seem the time that the teleprompter was shown that Kamala was looking directly at it, and it was definitely lit up with words on it at a time where Kamala was speaking, not when the host was speaking. However, you could say, well, it just took them away a time to end the prompter. For example, let's say that I'm talking to you right now, and I'm asking, or you're asking me questions, and you have a teleprompter, we're in the same room. You ask me the question. 40 seconds later, I happen to be looking at the teleprompter, and the teleprompter's saying the question you asked. It's not giving me an answer. That's, in theory, possible. My gut feeling is it was probably for the host, but I'm not going to be charitable once more when you see how all of these mainstream media outlets have gone to bat for Kamala Harris, including just recently CBS, changing answers, splicing together edits to make Kamala look less incompetent than she actually is. So it's certainly something, if they thought they could get away with it, they would. Did they do it in this instance or not? I don't know. The last thing I'll say, the one thing I'll say is, just like with the accusation that Kamala Harris had special earrings on that were like a radio, so she could get answers when she was debating. Maybe I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility, but if that's the case, wow, are they bad? If she's reading those answers that she's giving at that town hall off of a teleprompter, that is horrible because the answers sucked. So they're so bad, the answers are almost so bad that the defense of Kamala Harris is going to be like, come on, really? If we were going to give her the answers, we couldn't give her better answers than these? And that's actually persuasive to me. It's like, yeah, I could see that, but I don't know. Did you hear more on it than what I'm saying as far as, the two versions I heard?
I saw the clip you were saying, but there's another clip from the quartering. He was the one who saw it, and apparently Kamala was giving the answer, and a person behind, like the one that's getting the answer, is repeating exactly the same things Kamala was saying, like at the same time.
I'll have to look for it. I really will. I tried to, in the image I saw, I tried to freeze frame it and then zoom in, because that was the first thing that came to mind, was like, well, is that prompter saying things similar to what she's saying? And I was unable to make out the words. So my resolution of the video I had wasn't good enough so I think it'd be interesting if someone had the technology that they were able to clean that up, and if we could see actually what was said on that prompter.
Well, it's kind of hard. It will happen the same thing that happened with what's the name, Rittenhouse, when they were
Mhm.
trying to get to the picture that they had to make, get like a bigger resolution, and they couldn't get it, and they were
Right.
like using, and it uses interpolation and stuff like that. So it just creates things. So we don't know. I won't say that it's the truth or no. I don't think we're gonna be able to see it from the frame that I saw. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah,
it here's the thing. It like obviously the specifics mattered. And so I don't want anyone to take it the wrong way, right? Whether she used a teleprompter or not, the specifics matter. But I think the fact that we live in an environment, particularly with her, that it is I am absolutely certain that Univision would help her cheat if they could get away with it. Absolutely certain that they are more interested, and this isn't conspiracy. This is all throughout the media. You could see the slant. For example, you could see coverage showed, or I saw watchdogs were saying after the attempted assassination of Trump, 94% of the coverage of ABC was negative to Trump after an assassination attempt. Like, that's unheard of. It's outrageous. And so it's clear that these mainstream outlets are basically just propagandists, and they're all in with Kamala Harris. And so given that, it's one of these problems that I think that many of the institutionalists that I argue against haven't came to grips with. Their argument is that someone like me is like an insane conspiracy theorist, even though I'm not. I think I'm quite moderate compared to what other people think. But my distrust of these institutions, they think that puts me on being the side of an insane conspiracy theorist, and how dare I? And that's very dangerous. And my answer to that is, it's not my fault, it's the institution's fault. They have shown themselves to be incredibly partisan, incredibly corrupt, incredibly biased over and over and over again. And so this is the world we live in. When you could see in real time CBS 60 Minutes, or whatever 60 Minutes is on, I think it's CBS, when you could see them put out a clip of an answer of Kamala Harris to a question, and then when it airs live, they totally splice up the answers to make her seem more competent. Every one of us saw that. There's no excuse for that. And so what is the person who saw that supposed to believe 2 days later when they see a teleprompter at a town hall meeting? What do you expect those people to say? Does Univision and mainstream media outlets, places like that, deserve the benefit of the doubt? Does Kamala Harris deserve the benefit of the doubt? Of course
no.
not. So someone like me could reserve judgment and say, it's interesting, but do you expect the average person to do that? Of course not. When you cry wolf over and over again, people aren't going to believe you then when you're like, no, this time, trust us. We're being honest this time. And so that's the mistake they've made. The trust in media mainstream media outlets is still at record lows, and this is the game they've played. When you play the game that you're just propagandists that are putting your thumb on the scale for one side, and many mainstream media people, journalists, quote unquote, oh fuck, I put another job title in quotes. Oh shit, defamation, I guess. I'm on notice again. But when you see these people, like when they're announcing, well, more important than being even is when one side's such fascist, we have to go against them. Okay. Once you announce that, what do you expect us to believe? Similarly, when you saw Dr. Fauci and all of these people admitting, yeah, we had to lie to you about masks, what do you expect people to believe going forward? You just told us that you'll lie to you. We'll lie to you to fit our whims. Okay? Right? So you can't expect people to not be distrusting of these institutions. That doesn't mean that every accusation of corruption or malfeasance of the media is true. That doesn't mean that at all. It could very well be that this was innocent and it was just a teleprompter for this speaker at Univision. That could be the case. But you can't blame people for thinking the worst at this point. And there's what's the counter? What's Univision going to say? No, trust us. Super serious, trust us. Or 60 Minutes. Okay, then release the transcript. Right? Let's see the full transcript.
Yeah.
Well, no, we're not going to do that. Just take our word for it. Okay. So that's the position we're in.
I want to give a shout out to Nish that called yesterday. I thought he was going to go ahead and just scream at me for being ill-informed about FEMA, but that was
that was a great call. I always like talking to people that are sort of more involved in a real world way in situations that are going on, and I thought that was very enlightening to me. And of course, I think all of us intuitively understand when it comes to government money, how there's bloat and fraud and waste. But to hear someone talking about this specific agency that's in the news so much, just about how much that's going on and how big of a priority DEI is, I thought that was very interesting. And, I have talks like that with people that I can't get into specifics because I don't want to cost anyone their job. But I do talk to people that are involved in certain industries like this in the public sphere, and the stories are unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Even
just
in private corporations, the stories are pretty bad as well. But yeah.
But
so
no,
I'm gonna go ahead and go. I have to leave. Thank you so much for taking my call. Shout out to Niche. Fuck you, tomfoolery, and have a good one.
All right, thanks, man. Good hearing from you again. All righty. Good stuff. Who we got this time? Rome, Egypt. We're going to move in. I don't know if I've talked to you before, Rome. Hello, Rome, Egypt. Can you hear me?
Hello, good sir. I can indeed hear you.
All right. Thanks for calling in, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I've got some... So I should preface, I'm kind of a reluctant Trump voter.
Okay.
I much would prefer Vance or Vivek or Ron DeSantis.
Me too.
I'm not super hardcore right wing. Like, for example, me and my dad both supported Romney, including when he was running against Trump the first time.
With his binders of women and.
Come on, we both know that was bullshit.
I know.
But yeah. So I'm more concerned right now with and this hasn't started promoting him yet, but he has the way he speaks and exaggerates it, and it starts coming off as lies, right? Mm-hmm. Like the amount of times that he says we have the greatest economy under Trump, which I mean, it was a good economy, but it's not true that it was the greatest, right? He just exaggerates everything. Like how am I supposed to defend this to people who point out like Trump has no character? Like my dad, for example, will not vote for Trump now. He's not leftist. He's like right-wing libertarian, but he won't vote for Trump because he perceives him as having no moral character, and he thinks that that's the most important thing a candidate has. Well, so first, I don't know how to defend this anymore because it's just so egregious at this point.
So a couple things to say. First off, it is not a referendum on a specific person's moral character. The first thing you have to understand.
I'm aware. Yes, that's what I believe.
It is unless you have good reason to vote third party, it is choosing one or the other, right? And so with I hate to do this, but the same could be said if I'm talking to a Harris voter. It's like, listen, one of the arguments you could make is, even if you could point out to a lot of flaws in Harris, is she better than Trump, right? The same is true of Trump. So if moral character is sort of one of the reasons that you will pull the trigger on who you vote for, you're not comparing Trump's moral character to your own or to your neighbors or to your pastor. You're comparing his moral character to the moral character of Kamala Harris and the DNC. And I think in that world, even with the flaws that you could have of Trump lying or, allegedly Trump cheated on his wife, that's very immoral. I take marriage very seriously. I think that's not a good thing whatsoever. When you stack those two up, how does that line up to the lies of Kamala Harris? How does that stack up to sort of the weaponization of race, the attacking Joe Biden for being against busing and then all of a sudden supporting it, the complete 180 on the bulk of her positions? When it comes to those moral issues, for example, you tell me if you think this is correct. One of the most central attacks from Kamala Harris' team against Donald Trump is Project 2025, right?
Yeah.
But they know that's a lie. They know it.
They do, but
they know Trump's denounced it. They know that
that's
the founders
what Trump says. But my dad is like, well, Trump's a liar, and look at all these people that were in Trump's cabinet that helped with 2025. You really think that Trump's not involved in this?
Yes, right. Because there's different types of lies, right? So, for example, Trump lies like a car salesman lies, right? Like you go to get a car and they're like, this is the greatest car you'll ever own. I've never seen more comfortable seats than this car. Oh my goodness, this car will last you for 10 years. Now, the truth is they might be selling you a lemon, in which case it's very immoral. But it might just be a good car that they're exaggerating. Or the guy, we just had a parade in the town I'm from, the little town. They have a festival, and there's, you got just like a carnival. You got these people. Oh, we got the best pizza here. It's the best pizza. Is it the best? Or are you just, bullshitting me? Those are the sort of lies Trump tells. There was this journalist that worked. I'm from the Pennsylvania area, so I'm about an hour and a half outside of Pittsburgh. I think she worked for KDKA, which is a news outlet here in Pittsburgh. And I remember she said in like 2018, which stuck with me. She said, the thing about Trump is Trump supporters don't take what he says as literally true. They take what he's saying as directionally true. But Trump's opponents don't look at the directional. They take the literal. And that's where such a dichotomy exists. So Trump will say things like, this is the biggest crowd ever. And it's like, no, it's not. It's clearly not the biggest crowd. In fact, it's not even the biggest crowd in this state in this year. Here was a football game that I could point to that had a bigger crowd. It's not even the biggest political crowd ever. Here's a political crowd, right? But it's a huge crowd, right? And so you could say, well, I find that to be an unconscionable lie. But that lie's similar to me that when my dad goes fishing, he goes, holy shit, Rob, you should see the size of this fish I caught. It had to be 33 inches. And then when they measure it and they show me a picture, it's like, well, it was 26 inches. It's like, well, it's still a big trout, but you exaggerated. Is that lie as egregious as of a lie as if you like your insurance, you could keep it? Or that Trump said Nazis are good people? Or that actually we are for securing the border? Which lies are more significant?
So the thing is, on the positional changes with Harris, I generally agree, just with the record, but my dad will say things like, well, people change their positions.
That's true.
And he'll just believe it. Like, he'll believe that she's 100% changed all her positions.
But why would he give her that benefit of the doubt and not Trump then?
Probably because there's no Harris, I don't know. But when I bring up, like, anytime I bring up here's this thing about Harris showing, like, a big lie she did, or how she swapped a position, or how she was arresting black people in California for smoking weed while she did it. Mm-hmm. He'll just say, oh, that's out of context. Or, like, whatever. But I don't know how to reason with it at this point.
It's very difficult, right? The thing is, there's two things Trump has going against him. He is objectionably unlikable for certain types of people. Right? For example, I'll tell you, one of the people in my wife's family is a diehard Catholic, diehard Republican. They won't vote for Trump because they find him to be a very crude man. He's foul-mouthed. He hangs around with strippers. He probably cheated on his wife with a porn star. It does not matter. I could say to them, what's your biggest issue? Oh, my biggest issue is abortion. Well, Trump appointed conservative judges that got Roe v. Wade overturned. And if Kamala Harris wins, there's a solid chance that she'll get to appoint 2 Supreme Court justices. This would basically enshrine abortion, which means dead babies. You're willing to accept dead babies because you think Trump's foul-mouthed? Yes. Yes, he is. It's hard to reach that person. It's hard. Those people that are so emotional about like characteristics that they're not going to look at the policies. It's very difficult. It's hard to have a sobering conversation with them and be like, but listen, I think maybe you're placing too much emphasis on the personal character flaws, of which there are many. Not only, and I don't say this as someone who's above the fray. I myself have many personal character flaws. You probably have many personal character flaws.
Actually, I watched Destiny for a while, and so that
there you go. So you have a huge character flaw. Right. So, I mean, it's certainly true that you could point the finger at anyone for character flaws. I personally think that the direction the country's going and the policies would be more important, but to each their own. The other thing is, there is a massive, massive, massive institution bias against Trump. And so the stories you hear that are amplified of Trump oftentimes would be directionally true for almost every person in the national spotlight for politics or as far as being a businessman, etc., such as infidelities. Like, for example, we know that there's a congressional slush fund that's paid off with your tax dollars, untold amounts of sexual harassment charges against members of Congress. We'll never know who those people were, but I'm sure it's people of the Republican and Democratic Party, and probably people that your father and you and me have supported that are included in that. Okay, we just don't have institutions that are out to get those people. So they're not going to run 24/7 attacks where the FBI is spying on them and it's being leaked to the press and the press is going with any rumor. the same sorts of attacks that come on Donald Trump were the attacks we saw on someone like Brett Kavanaugh, who, again, your father, if he's a Republican or traditionally moderately conservative, probably would have thought Kavanaugh looked like a decent family man.
He thought all the Kavanaugh stuff was bullshit.
Right, but not the Trump stuff.
Not the Trump stuff.
I wonder why. It's because the Trump stuff's been more insidious and more long-term. And Trump's also, there's certain stuff about Trump you can't deny. We don't see pictures of Brett Kavanaugh hobnobbing it with Playboy Playmates or, and that's certainly true. So you have to ask yourself those sorts of questions. When it comes to the issue of lying, again, I think there are different types of lies, and Trump's saying, no one respects women more than me. I had the greatest economy ever. Like, he says these sort of stuff, and it's always as someone who's sort of interested in the truth. I always kind of roll my eyes a little. For example, with the debate, he said, everyone, even left-wingers, left-wing lawyers, etc., wanted Roe v. Wade overturned. Well, that's not true. That's just not true, right? It's not. And now it is true that more people than you think, including even left-wing people that favor abortion, actually had a problem with Roe v. Wade. I believe even Ginsburg herself at one point said she thought that the original Roe v. Wade ruling was problematic, right? But the way Trump phrases it, it's technically untrue what he says. But those sorts of, and listen, I don't have a problem with criticizing Trump for exaggerations or for, things of that nature like that. But you have to ask yourself, if it's a binary choice, Trump or the other side, what have the lies they've been told? They told us that the economy was great. They told us that the border was secure. They told us that Trump said Nazis were fine people. They told us that Trump told people to drink bleach. They told us that we had to lock down because of COVID, but racism was a bigger threat, so it was okay to go march for Black Lives Matter. They told us that the riots for Black Lives Matter was mostly peaceful. They told us that the war in Afghanistan was going great for 20 years, and then when the way we pulled out, it would be great, and the ANC or whatever, the Afghan army, would be able to withhold that. They told us that they didn't blow up the Nord Stream pipeline. They tell us that climate change is so bad that we basically have to gut the economy of the United States. Like, these lies are all far worse than Trump saying, I have the greatest crowd side. I had the greatest economy. And as far as like Project 2025 and the things that are in it, what exactly is objectionable about Project 2025? Like, what would your dad be? That's the slogan that said, but
my dad has mixed feelings about 2025. He likes a lot of the economic policies,
correct,
social policies. He doesn't like the stuff relating to replacing a lot of the staff with right-wingers and that sort of thing. He sees it as like filling the cabinet with stooges.
Isn't that what the current situation is? For me, see, I'm voting for vastly...
Yeah, but...
For vastly different
no,
reasons.
the institutions are all bipartisan.
Right.
I just don't know how to fight back. I'll link him stuff, and he'll be like, well, Trump lied, so of course they're going to call him out on the lie.
But
they have to write all these stories about Trump because he lies so much.
Try it this way. Show your dad the clip of Chuck Schumer saying in 2016, once Trump won the election, but before he got sworn in, Chuck Schumer goes on Rachel Maddow's show and says, Trump can't criticize the FBI because they'll find 6 ways a Sunday of getting back at him. In other words, what Chuck Schumer, the leader of the opposition party, just told the American people was, you can't criticize the FBI. That the leader of the executive, who is the head of the FBI, the boss of the FBI, the president, must be fearful of the FBI. Because if he challenges them, they will bury him, which is exactly what they did. By the way, that's the same way it would work at the IRS or the EPA or the State Department. That's what this bureaucracy is. That's what's really running the show. Just like right now, it's not Joe Biden running the show. He doesn't know where he's at half the time. And it won't be Kamala Harris running the show. She doesn't have the mental competence to run a local hamburger stand, let alone the most powerful country in the world. It's going to be these same people behind the scenes. Those people have a vested interest in not having someone come to power that's going to say, we don't like you. You're no longer going to be in power. They were fine with Mitt Romney. They're fine with Jeb Bush. They're fine with George Bush. They were fine with John McCain. They're fine with Hillary. They're fine with John Kerry. They're fine with Obama. They're fine with Biden and with Harris because they still maintain their power. But what they don't want is someone like a Trump, a Tulsi Gabbard, an RFK, and they didn't want Bernie Sanders in 2016 because they don't want someone that they feel will challenge the institutions. They don't want that. So is it any surprise? That's my thesis. That's what Chuck Schumer, I think, was telling everyone. And so just ask your dad this. If Chuck Schumer was right, if that was the system, that we had a bunch of institutions like the FBI that were like, we're running the show, and if the president challenges us, we'll bury him. What would that look like? Would it look like a bunch of people at those agencies coming out publicly against the president? Would it look like them leaking stuff to the press nonstop? Would it look like them illegally spying on a presidential campaign and then later presidential team? Would it look like the generals saying, we refuse to listen to these orders when you tell us to pull out of Syria? I think that's what it would look like, and that's exactly what's happened. So if my thesis is right, and these are a bunch of institutions that are really running things, that don't want an outside power coming in and saying, nope, actually, the Constitution says I'm in charge of you, not the other way around. This is exactly how it would play out. Or it could be that the same institutions that saw all sorts of corruption during a Bill Clinton presidency, a George Bush presidency, an Obama presidency, and a Biden presidency, and did nothing, all of a sudden it was just that Trump was so bad that they all had to in unison speak out against him. So we had a bunch of people, for example, at the State Department that testified against Donald Trump in the first impeachment with Trump had a phone call to Zelensky, and that was worth impeaching. And they kept saying, oh, it was despicable. Trump kept going against our foreign policy. Wait a minute, we elected you to decide our foreign policy? That's news to me. I think you're just bureaucrats that are supposed to listen to the foreign policy of the elected leader of the country, who is Donald Trump. That's what I thought. But they kept saying, no, it was our foreign policy. And they found what Trump said on that phone call to be so objectionable. And yet, they basically didn't raise their voice to the national press when Joe Biden was the point person under Barack Obama to Ukraine, and his son was working for one of the very people that the State Department was saying was a Russian plant in Zlochevsky that ran Burisma. The vice president who's in charge of weeding out corruption in Ukraine, son goes to work making $80,000 a month for a corrupt pro-Russian oligarch. Why didn't the State Department leak to the press then? Where was their concern? Where were their calls for impeachment? And so I'm supposed to believe that, like, people like your father, what they have to believe is, no, it's just Trump is uniquely the worst dude that was ever president. He's just so much more corrupt than the rest of them that it just so happens that all these people, and that could theoretically be true. I just think that doesn't fit the pattern. It doesn't make sense when you look at things on a grander scheme.
I so want to get him on here with you, bro.
I would love to talk to him. And again, take the State Department specifically. If Trump was such a menace that General Milley and General Mattis and people at the State Department came out, why was the world basically breaking out in peace for 4 years under Trump and now it's on fire? It's almost like those people that we task with being experts that, just let them run shit behind the scenes. We don't really know what goes into baking the cake. Trust us, they're doing a good job. And if they tell us that someone like Trump's doing a bad job, we have to listen. It's almost like they're full of shit. That's almost what it seems like. And so, for me, I find it interesting, and you can see this. There's this perception with people that you want to just say, shit's complicated. And the truth is, shit is complicated. I'm just some dumb redneck. I work 80 hours a week. I don't have time to sit down and look at the minutia of every specific foreign policy decision or every specific domestic economic position or campaign finance law, et cetera, et cetera. These are difficult things to get into, particularly if you're not a nerd like me. I find this stuff entertaining, but if you're a normal person, you probably have poker night with the friends or you enjoy going out with your family and shit. Not that I don't.
I'm a nerd. I did a whole doc on the response to Hurricane Helene.
Yeah, with, so we're
links to all the on-the-ground videos.
But we're outliers, right? I think most people aren't doing stuff like this. Most people aren't listening to some fat guy on a Friday night, talking politics and shit. So I think we're doesn't mean we're bad. I think we're great people. But I'm just saying that's not the norm. I understand that. And so it is true that it's like you have a default to trusting experts. Hasn't COVID taught us what that leads to? The blind faith in the expert? Because it turns out that science is good and expertise is good, and it is something that we should strive for, sort of the, understanding that there are certain people that know more than others, and we should celebrate that. But humans are fallible. Humans are corruptible. Humans are biased, and science is interpreted through humans. Science is good. Scientists are humans that are trying to work through science. The same is true when it comes to other things, foreign policy, right? The process itself could be good, but you have to understand that the people that are involved with it, they have biases. They could be corruptible. And so when you have these institutions that have basically ran the show behind the scenes for decades, they don't want to give up that power. And I don't think that their agenda coincides with your agenda or with mine, or for that matter, with Bernie Sanders voters, or with people in the inner city, or with wealthy people in the suburbs. They don't give a shit. That's not their interest.
Because I think 1984 is my favorite government.
The year, not the book. You mean like? Okay, I see what you mean.
The government in the book.
Yeah, right. And I mean, but that's how I look at it. And it's, to me, I hope that COVID, to me, it should have been a huge wake-up call to people. Yet all these leaders, like, wagging their finger. I'm here in Pennsylvania, so I'm dealing with people in Pennsylvania. I see it more closely because I'm living it. I watched it be devastating to the people I knew. For example, small business owners that own bars and restaurants. I knew a dude that he used to be my landlord. He owns a small restaurant in the little town that's also a bar. And there was a government agent that once a week would sit in his parking lot to make sure that he wasn't opening his restaurant to more than like 5 people at a time or whatever it was, and that he wasn't selling a slice of pizza before noon, and that he wasn't selling more than like 6 packs of beer for takeout. That's where our resources were going, right? My governor, Tom Wolf, said that you were a coward in the face of COVID if you didn't lock down. He said that I have the video up to prove it. He said,
imagine telling people that the brave thing to do is hide away in their home.
Exactly. That's talking about 1984 and the idea of doublespeak. You're a coward if you don't hide in your home in fear. That's the argument they were making. And he's saying all this shit, and he's saying, if you live in a county and the county leaders say that you could open your business up, even if you don't, he will punish that county by withholding state and federal money for emergency relief for COVID, and he would take away your license to operate a business.
He doesn't have to be European, does he?
Tom Wolf? I don't think so. It sounds like it, though. I'm sure. So, like, I'm looking at this, and then Tom Wolf did something that was truly amazing. After he said all of that, 2 weeks after that, he violated his own orders to go march with Black Lives Matter. And no one gave a shit. Like, no one in the press, the only person, I used to do a radio show with a journalist. He has a press pass, and he asked Health Secretary Levine, Rachel Levine, who's now been promoted to Admiral Levine under the Biden administration. So she or they, whatever fucking pronoun they use, has been promoted despite their incompetence, and asked specifically, what do you say to the fact that Tom Wolf called people cowards that didn't listen to these lockdown orders, and then he violated it himself? And they're like, well, actually, we think free speech is really important, and we respect that. Next question. There's your fucking experts. That's who they are. That's who we're told to just blindly trust. And make no mistake about it, it's not just incompetence. There's a lot of incompetence, but that was because their stated agenda to keep us all safe was not something they really believed. They believe that there's a hierarchy. For my friends, everything. For my enemies, the law. Fuck you. You'll listen to us if we don't like you. But if you're out there marching for causes we like, well, then we'll make exceptions. And the same shit's true at the State Department. The same shit's true at the IRS. And it's not that you need to sit down and talk to these people in a smoky room and say, okay, Lois Lerner, here's what you're going to do with the IRS to target conservative groups. That's not how it works. They all just think we're better than them. We run the show. We're morally superior. And so this is how we're going to do shit. And when someone like Trump comes along with all of his flaws, of which there are many, when he comes along and says, I don't know about that shit. I think that I get to run shit. They don't like that. And so it's nothing for all of these sycophants. Like, does your dad think when Eric Holder said that he was Barack Obama's wingman, did your dad have a problem with that? Do you have a problem with the fact that Merrick Garland's basically attacking Trump and all? Yeah, well, he's attacking Trump.
I would imagine so.
So the idea that it's somehow unique that, Trump's going to replace people with sycophants, that's the status quo. The status quo is a bunch of people that agree with each other. I would love to sit here and go through the IG reports, Horowitz IG reports, on the culture at the FBI and how antithetical to Trump it was. Those are the people, that mindset still pervades the FBI. That's why they're going after parents at school board meetings that are traditionally conservative. That's why they're going after people protesting outside of abortion centers. But when asked, well, what about Antifa? Well, it's just an idea. What about people attacking pro-life centers? Well, most of those attacks occur at night. So what are we going to do? You went after the January 6th people very harshly. What about the Black Lives Matter protesters? What about the pro-Palestinian protesters that are
To be fair about the abortion clinics, a lot of those are probably on sloped roads.
Right, it's tough. Did you notice? Did you? And then, but that's a great point you pointed. By the way, did you notice that same sloped roof in Butler? They actually had.
It was covered this time. Yeah.
What did they get them better boots or some shit? Like get the fuck out.
They got a new roof, bro.
But if that's another thing. Watch when that woman testified in front of Congress from the Secret Service that was in charge. Like the arrogance, the incompetence, the corruption. It's there for everyone to display. And what I'm supposed to believe is someone like Milley, General Milley, who comes out and is like, well, I'm against Trump, right? Milley publicly said that he called China and said, hey, if Trump ever decides to attack you, I'll warn you beforehand. That's fucking treason. You just called our biggest adversary and said if we ever result in a conflict, that he would warn them beforehand? Imagine if you're the Navy SEAL that gets sent on a mission and you show up on the ground in China only to be obliterated, almost like they knew you were coming. Well, that's because the general in charge told them you were coming. Like, imagine that. And then I'm supposed to believe because Milley comes out and it's like, well, I think Trump's a fascist. Oh, well then. Or General Mattis, who he was infuriated that Trump suggested using the National Guard to stop rioters all across this country. Weird, I didn't hear Mattis speaking up when New York deployed the National Guard in subways. Anyone remember Mattis's quotes? Huh. Didn't give a shit when a Democrat was doing it. Isn't that strange? Didn't seem to have shit to say after January 6th when the National Guard was there for months, deployed outside the Capitol. Didn't have shit to say about that. That was a fine use of the National Guard. So the truth is, I think the overwhelming amount of evidence shows that there's a clear double standard and that these institutions are already incredibly biased. And so the idea that it's a big threat for Trump to say weed these people out is nonsensical. In fact, I think that I would have preferred Vivek. Vivek's solution was basically fire 80% of these people. Disband the FBI. That's exactly what I would do. My first day in office, I'd be like, here's my 3-month plan. The FBI is done. That's it. On the ground agents will interview. If they pass an interview that they don't exhibit too extreme of a bias, we'll find other places to put them. The leadership, you're out for good. And we're going to investigate you to see if you've engaged in any criminal activities, misusing your position for that of political influence. That's what I would do. That would be my solution. But you're not going to get someone as extreme as me in there. I think Vivek would have been the closest to it. But I agree with you. I think that, Ron DeSantis might not say it as articulately as... Well, I don't want the word articulate. Ron DeSantis would probably be more tactful, but I truly believe if DeSantis is good like I think he is, that he would replace the bulk of these people in positions of leadership, much like Trump would. In fact, he'd probably appoint better people that were more trustworthy to him. It's just he's not going to say it like Trump, so it's not a scary boogeyman. But don't worry, the media is going to make it out to be that way. They're going to say, Ron DeSantis wants to fire all these people and replace them with his own people. No shit, like Biden did? Really? Wow. Right, of course. I want an attorney general and people that are working at the FBI that don't exist for the mere purposes of taking me and my supporters down. I don't think that's too much to ask. But I would be happy to talk to you down. And I will say one other, I hesitate to give advice, but one piece of advice I would give you possibly is, please, please, please do not leave your political differences and vote affect your relationship with your father.
It does not.
Yeah, because
it does not. In fact, my sister actually. So we constantly, me, my brother, and him. And me and my brother are kind of like against him, quote unquote. Oh, it's really only on Trump. So like most stuff. So like I'm not an isolationist. Neither is my brother, and that's my dad. We both want to help Ukraine actually more than we are. Mm-hmm. That's where we differ from a lot of Trump fans. We want to protect Taiwan. We want to be involved overseas because we know that if America disappears, it's going to be a massive power vacuum, and probably only Russia or China will fill the vacuum. So that's one thing over there. But like my sister in this chat, let me go up here. She got really worried because this.
Excuse me.
Gosh, where is it? This is making me sad now because. But my sister married someone whose family did break up the politics, so she's probably sensitive to it.
I deal with it a lot. And here's the thing. I talk about this a lot. There are people that will tell you the opposite. There are people I respect that will tell you, like, this is it. It's life and death. If there are people in your family that disagree with you, then it might be time to, you got to stick your ground, blah, 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 blah. By the way, people were saying, screw Ukraine. I disagree with you and your positions on Ukraine and stuff, but neither here nor there. We could talk about that. I know you do,
but that's fine. That's not like a big deal. Like, that's something that, like, you can still, like, love America and disagree about foreign policy.
Well, I mean, you can still love America and hate Donald Trump and vote for Kamala Harris. I don't, listen, it's separate. I know there are a lot of people that say that. I just don't, look, It's why I'm not the fighter of the future. The truth is that people like me's influence, what little I have, which I have almost none, but people like me's influence will wane, because what's going to happen is the only counter to the extremism that we see that's coming from the establishment institutions, which is the face of it is the Democratic Party, is to give them their own medicine. And like, I could, all I want, say, hey, we're better than them. But the truth is, cancel culture won't stop until they're canceled. And the truth is, people like Robbie Starbuck that's out there saying, hey, company John Deere, you're supposed to represent sort of Midwesterner values, rural people values. Why are you funding pride parades? That's what gets them to change. Because right now, those corporations all know, look, we play the DEI game. Because one side wants to cancel us if we don't, and the other side will just say, shucks. So now the Republican side, the conservatives are saying, no, we'll cancel you too. Now they have to make a decision. Ooh, okay. I don't want that to be the world, but that's what's coming. It sucks that I live in a world where I have a ton of left-wing friends from my college days when I was in policy debate. When I go to events and they're there, they're going to shit on me for my political takes. They're going to. They're going to be like, Trump sucks, he's a fascist, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes I give it back to them, but most of the time I'm hanging out with those people at this point. It's like a wedding, a funeral, a child's birthday party, something like that.
You don't want to ruin social
Exactly.
events? What?
Exactly.
What kind of Trump voter are you?
Right. So I'm just like, yeah. Anyways, like, that's how I am. And maybe the truth is we do need to start saying, no, I'm going to give it right back. Because until people stand up and do that, then it won't be found societally acceptable. But my personal recommendation is I'm not going to lose any close friends or family over this to the best of my ability. I have at least one aunt that despises Donald Trump more than anything. And like, I know there's an uneasy truce between us when I'm around, because I know she's seen my show and I know she knows what I believe. But I still love my aunt, and she's still very nice to me. And we just put it to the side. We don't talk about politics. So I don't like when I talk to people and they're like, my dad or my mom or my sister, I can't get along with them. I can't talk to them anymore. So I'm glad to hear that it's not that with you, because I don't think it's worth all that. I think being a good son is probably more important than casting your vote a particular way. Now, I don't think you should change your vote just because you're dad, but what I'm saying is I don't think it's worth ruining a relationship with your father. There's ways to be tactful about it.
My dad has like no emotions about politics. Neither do I, honestly.
Good.
Like we'll get mad if someone does something obviously corrupt or stuff, but like when we're talking about politics, it's not really emotions involved. And I acknowledge we are kind of rare that way. A lot of people do have their emotions attached to their politics. So and I certainly get emotional. Like, I'm emotional when I speak on this, and sometimes I think people should get more emotional. Well, I mean, the emotion doesn't attach to the person I'm arguing with.
Right.
It attaches to the policy position, not the person.
That's why, like, I'll have these battles with like people like Destiny or Pisco. I don't wish them ill. They could mother F me and this, that, and the other. I'm not trying to get them canceled. I don't give a shit. I wish them well. I really do. That's honestly how I feel. And I know particularly like with Destiny, he says some inflammatory shit to the level that people are like, why would you give a shit? Who gives a shit? That guy made fun of that firefighter, Corey Competore, that died at the Trump rally.
Yeah, that's why I stopped watching Destiny,
it's crazy. That is a crazy take that he has, but I try to disassociate the characters from the argument. So for me, it's like, whatever. I actually, not to get psychoanalytical, but I think a lot of these people are fucking miserable. That's what I think. And I think that it shows when they come out as that extreme on some of this shit. Now, I also get very passionate and very heated, but the difference I think with me is God willing that I'm one of the luckiest people alive. I have a tremendous wife, a tremendous son. All of my neighbors are cool as shit. My in-laws are all cool. My family's all cool. I don't have much to complain about. I got a little back pain that I'm working on. So it's easy for me to come on here and be passionate and then shut the camera off and I'm good to go. Like I tried my best. I was honest. I was authentic. That's all I could do. So many people, I think, take it to a point where, I don't know if people believe me, but particularly after that first assassination attempt, I didn't even want to stream because I like to think that the characters that I'm up against, the Destinies, the Piscos, the tomfoolery, whatever. I like to think that even if I have disagreements, they're people that don't want me dead. They're people that aren't like, I'd fucking get this guy fired. I'd bury this guy, And after that assassination attempt, there was some ugly shit being sent by all kinds of people. Some of them surprised me. And that's why
Destiny really surprised me, actually.
That's why I was
shocked when I saw that stuff.
And I was
like,
trying
this has to be fake. I cannot imagine Destiny saying this.
And I wouldn't have said this other than the fact that it already was brought up by other people involved, but I actually made some private calls to people that I knew Destiny and was like, you guys ought to check up on him. Because he's either going to say or fucking do something that's going to cost him hugely. And so I think that someone needs to like be like, hey man, take a breath. What are you doing? You know, and it was amazing to me. I reached out to all of these people and no one wanted to have that conversation. And I wasn't even trying to make it political. I was just trying to make a broader point of like, listen, there has to be a framework of acceptable discourse before we could proceed with any sort of discussion, debate. Like, and the bare minimum of that is you can't be like, haha, I want you or the people you support to be killed. You can't, there's no dialogue that's possible when those are the stakes. And so can we all agree with that framework? Like, yes, calls for assassination or cheers when an assassination attempt occurs. That's something that all of us engaged in any sort of reasonable discourse should be like, that should be off the table. And I was shocked at how little, like, agreement I was getting on that point. Well, you know,
I guess we'll just have to assassinate them until they stop assassinating us.
Well, that would not be my I'm clearly, that's what I'm saying. I like clearly that fucking level of shit's way out of line. But even to the extent, like, I'm not the guy. I'm not the guy who was like, you know, for me, this is the best example I could get. After that initial assassination attempt, I remember seeing this footage, I think it was at Home Depot, and there was this old woman who put on Facebook, like, I hope next time they don't miss, talking about when they shoot at Trump.
Stuff like that.
And so, you know, here comes some guy with a cell phone camera, and he's like, this is the woman that put that post. What do you think about this Home Depot? And here's this old lady, and she's embarrassed at work. She ends up getting fired. Now, the truth is, probably, it's a compelling argument. Hey, man, they'd do the same shit to us, and they're never going to stop until they face consequences. And that's probably true. But I can't be that guy. I would never be that guy going in there with the camera filming that woman. I'm not calling for her to be fired. So I don't think you're bad if you did call for her to be fired. Right. I don't think you're bad. It's not what I'm doing, but I understand it. And the argument against me is like, hey, Rob, we tried it your way for years. How'd that work? Things got more and more extreme. I was involved in academia. I was doing a lot of debate coaching. I got a degree, a graduate degree to hopefully become a professor. It's inundated with far left people. I've seen it. I've seen it in the debate community, how fucking radical it is. You know, I continued to be like, cooler heads will prevail. I'm not going to counter their craziness with my own craziness. And it didn't work. It didn't work at all. And so part of me is like, I understand now that my argument will lose. The idea that cooler heads will prevail is bullshit. They won't. The left is so, and I say the left, it is the left. The left has become the dupes that go along with it. They have won the cultural battles, and so the institutions adapt the verbiage of the left because they know it helps them maintain power. But they don't give a shit about the causes of the left. They give a shit about maintaining power for themselves. And if that means being pro-choice today, so be it. And if that means tomorrow talking about freedom fries and fuck France and, you know, all the shit that we heard in the Iraq War that you more traditionally associate with, like, conservatism, then that's what they'll say. They don't give a shit. They don't deeply believe any of this shit. It's just what they do to maintain power. And right now, the left, because they won so many of these cultural battles, they're what gets paid lip service to, and they firmly believe that they're morally superior, and so there's no talking sense into them. Not all of them, but in the aggregate. And so it is, fuck you, you're canceled, you said something we don't like. We don't have a problem with almost 90% of social media and mainstream media being biased for our side. We think that's great. In fact, we do have a problem that it's only 90%. It should be even more. You know, one of the things I was going to talk about if no one called in today was this pushback that now it's like, oh my God, Elon Musk is biased on X for Trump, and that's outrageous. Fuck you guys. This is the world you created. You were fine when it was Zuckerberg. You were fine when it was Dorsey. You're fine when it was Google. When all of the institutions in 2016, all these social media companies 2016, 2020 were pushing one way, you were absolutely fine with it. And now that one of those, X, or Twitter, was bought and changed to X by Elon Musk, now they're like, this is unfair. Fuck you. I'm sorry, you have a kid in the back, should be swearing. I'm so sorry.
I use X a lot lately, especially looking for links to videos for the Hurricane Moon doc I made. And I still encountered, I would say, easily 50-50 anti-Trump and pro-Trump stuff. Like, I didn't feel like it was heavily one side or the other. So my guess is that it is no longer really biased, but people are perceiving it as biased because they're not used to normal.
That's my guess as well, but I know that there was just a report that came out today that claimed certain accounts are being amplified and others are being de-amplified. I don't know. I'd suspect that that's not the case, but even if it is, I'm going to listen to them complain? Sorry. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. Like, they did not care when it was 2020. They did not care when it was 2016. They didn't care before that when the vast bulk of mainstream media was pushing sort of one ideology. 2008, I remember, the Republicans and Democrats both ran on needing to bail out the banks. But every other third party was against it.
Dude.
But that's the point I'm trying to make. There was...
I didn't realize how bad that was till I watched The Big Short and did
and
then I realized the scope of what happened. And I was like, holy shit, we bailed out these...
Right, and no one... which you could stomach bailing them out if people would have been held accountable. If people would have went to jail. Was. But no one was. So what's the lesson learned? Okay,
well, so the crazy thing is, I don't remember if it was the AG at the time, but he's quoted as like explaining why they didn't go after anyone. He was saying, well, there was no specific victims.
Right.
I was like, dog, millions of people, hundreds of millions probably, lost pensions. Like, I don't know if it's literally 100 million people, but like, it would have been close to that many adults in America invested into the stock market. Like, there are a ton of victims. Like, you shouldn't need a specific victim in this case for fraud.
Well,
like,
meanwhile,
the rating agencies were committing fraud.
Yep.
The loaners were committing fraud. Like everybody, every step down was committing fraud to keep this money fund going.
Meanwhile, the same people that make that argument are all for Trump being fined $500 million because he got a loan out from his property that he paid the bank back with interest that the bank was satisfied with. And you're like, well, there's no victim. It doesn't matter. $500 million. And you're like, what? And they're fine with that. But, no one lost their pension on that.
That's not even the same because nobody got paid back in 2008.
Right, that's what I'm saying. In the institute, when they say there was no specific victims, well, what? There were people that were devastated, whose 401ks were devastated, right? There were tons of victims. And it's just amazing. It's amazing to see. But, the comparison I draw to that is just, we were told that when I started college for communication in 2002, I think was the year I started college, one of the things that all of my professors talked about was basically 9 corporations controlled like 95% of the news in this country, and how the term gatekeeping and how devastating that was, that only the ideas they believed would be the ideas that were put out there. And so when you look through the lens of that in the 2008 financial crisis, it's like, well, of course, the bulk of the information that's coming out is going to be one-sided because all of these corporations that are also involved at some level in this, like, they're going to give you the message that they want. And so it seemed like, well, even Republicans and Democrats agree we have to bail these out and this is the way it has to be. Well, no, there was another side to that argument. Even if you don't agree with that side, there was another side. It's just you never got to hear it. The internet's sort of the great equalizer. Say what you want about all of the terrible things that social media has done, and there's many things to say. One positive it's done is I'm talking to 200 people right now. What are the chances in 2002 that some dude like me would be talking to 200 people on a nightly basis talking about politics? 0. This is just not going to happen. What was I going to do? Go to the street corner with a bullhorn? The very few people you had so limited a reach. Someone like Alex Jones that was getting on public access. That's about it. Other than that, you have to go through the mainstream media. That's it. And so now when we have these sort of social media places, and all of a sudden you can get glimpses into the cracks in the system. How much would we really have known about the bombing of ISIS-K after the Afghan pullout if it wasn't for X? How much would we have known?
Before my time. 2008 was the first.
Oh, no. ISIS-K, the bombing of ISIS-K, that's when Biden pulled out of Afghanistan. Remember? You remember?
For some reason, I was thinking of the Iraq War as well.
No. The bombing of ISIS-K, just here, in Biden's term, where he pulls out, he relies on the Taliban for protection, they kill 13 troops. Then he, to get revenge, said it was ISIS-K and he bombed ISIS-K. That was the story. Without social media, that would have been the end of it. There might have been scuttlebutt that it wasn't as it seemed, but that was it. But because of social media, it went viral that no, that's not what happened. What happened was they bombed a translator and his family. Ooh. That's what happened. They bombed innocent people. They never bombed ISIS-K.
What the Biden admin did?
Yes. That's what happened.
Shit.
That story would not have been known had it not been for social media, and tons of other stories like that. And so there is certainly more disinformation out there because when everyone could speak, the volume of disinformation and truthful information is both going to increase. So it's easy to just point and say, look at all that disinformation. True, there's a lot of disinformation. But it's not that the people that are complaining about disinformation are mad that it's not true. They're mad that they don't have a monopoly on what is deemed true. The actual truthfulness of the statement is irrelevant. That's why one of the things they censor is called malinformation, which is true information that is inconvenient to the administration. So, for example, you saying, hey, I got the COVID vaccine and I had a side effect. That could be 100% true, but they don't want you to say it because that's harmful, because then you've convinced other people that maybe they shouldn't take the vaccine, which is bad. So even though what you said is technically true, that still should be censored as malinformation. And so there's this sort of, that's what I see that Trump's up against. Trump is a very flawed man who is very talented, who happened to be the right person for the right time. In order to win, to be outside of this establishment, you had to be incredibly independently wealthy and incredibly charismatic. And Trump was both of those things. That's the only way that he won in 2016. He's going up against the most monolithic...
That didn't help they ran Hillary against him.
Well, that's certainly true. They're hubris, right? They picked someone who was incredibly unlikable and they were overconfident, right? And so he's still going up against that. I mean, they're talking blatantly about wanting to... Hillary Clinton and John Kerry, both former Secretary of States, have came out just in the past month and talked about the need to reform the First Amendment to censor disinformation. Yeah. Like, you may find yourself, your dad might find himself in the future, 4 years from now, not allowed to hear someone like me or to talk to his friends on Facebook about politics because he didn't like Trump's lying about crowd size or about the greatest economy ever. Is it worth it? When you could say, but maybe Trump will be a crazy authoritarian. We've already seen 4 years of Trump. What did he do? Did he lock all the gay people up like we were told? No. Did he kick all the brown people out of the country like we were told he was going to do?
Well,
no.
The thing with Trump is people don't look gay to him, remember?
A hilarious line. That was one of the best lines. Where's the gays for Trump? You don't look gay.
You don't look gay.
It's fucking great. And that's what, like, Trump, it's all about the lens that you look at him. Like, he reminds me of, like, the dudes I would see when I was a bartender. They would come in and they'd be telling these bullshit stories like, oh, man, I got in a fight last night. It was the biggest jack dude you'd ever seen, but I kicked his ass. And you're like, yeah, story's bullshit. But they're likable, and they're not lying about the important shit most of the time. And the truth is, if you just look at the record of Donald Trump versus the record of Harris-Biden, almost on any front, it's remarkably better for Trump. The only thing that would, to me, rationally convince someone not to vote for Trump is that you think he's just a shitty person. That he might be the type of person that would declare himself king. Or that maybe he is a racist. Or maybe he is a sex offender. And so fuck him. I can't vote for him. But if you're just looking on it on basis of the track record, or even what they're promising, like, you know, the idea you said about your dad that, like, well, people change their mind. That's absolutely true. I don't begrudge that. But the problem is, for Kamala Harris, why has she changed her mind? Well, she says her values are the same. Okay. So then why have you changed? She says she still believes in climate change. Okay. So in Pennsylvania, she knows it's a losing position to embrace ending fracking. She knows that'll cause her to lose Pennsylvania. So she's like, well, I'm against it now. I never really said I was for it. Yeah, you did. You blatantly said, let me be as clear as possible. I'm for banning fracking. That's what she said. Okay, so what's changed? If your values are the same, what's changed? And she doesn't have an answer. And so what we're left to, you tell me, what will a Harris administration looks like? She says it will be change, which implies it won't be the same as the Biden administration. And so you're like,
it's going to be the blackest administration,
right.
Let me tell you.
So it's like, if I'm trying to give her the benefit of the doubt, it's like, okay, one of their central themes is it's time for a change. Okay, so then that implies it's going to be different than Biden. So then, okay, how will it be different? Well, let's go look at the things that you suggested to be different. So the things you ran on last time you were running for president in 2020, right? Now, I don't believe in any of that anymore. Okay, so then is it going to be similar to the beliefs of your VP pick, Walls? Nah, no, it's not that. Okay, but it's going to be changed. So what would you have done differently than Biden? Nothing comes to mind. But your values haven't changed. So what does that mean?
I got to put in real quick, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I saw some stuff about my people talking about my dad on the chat, like he's brainwashed and stuff. No. What you guys have to understand about my father is he grew up in a conspiracy theory home, okay? Like, and I'm not talking about like weather modification conspiracy. I mean like my grandma at like 4 years ago said that she was pregnant with triplets and God told her that they were going to have to go live in tent cities soon. Like, this is the people he grew up with. They did this all the time, all sorts of conspiracies. Like, if there's a conspiracy theory, they believe it. And so now that he's like out of that, he went through college. He works for Northrop Grumman as a software engineer, makes a lot of money. Now he's very skeptical. Like if there's not hard proof of things, he's very skeptical of it.
It's the term conspiracy theory is strange to me in the first place because, the idea that Trump's involved in Project 2024, whatever, that itself is a conspiracy theory. You know what I mean? So like, it's only used
I guess
pejorative.
it doesn't apply as well to Trump because he's probably just so anti-Trump right now. Like,
Right,
why
that's what I'm saying.
Because
Yes.
I don't have either the time nor like the memorized knowledge to push back, especially because almost all this happens through text. So when I sit down on my computer to research,
Sure.
it's hard to send stuff.
Yeah, it really
that
it
text
is,
channel.
and listen. Trump doesn't do himself any favors as well. Like sometimes
No, he doesn't.
He is who he is at this point. It's one of the things I like about Trump. It frustrates the shit out of me when he can't stay on message. But the problem is he's too authentic.
It's called the weave.
Yeah, but it's like this, right? Like it's like if I am who I am on this stream, I really am. But you're different in different situations. For example, I swear a little. Sometimes I drink a little. I actually don't drink much at all anymore. I used to be an alcoholic, but I don't drink much anymore. But if I'm hanging out at a church event, I'm not cursing and swearing, right? But then if I'm hanging out with my old college buddies, I'm probably cursing and swearing more. I'm not telling dick jokes or something in certain places.
Honestly,
in other places I am. And so there is, you present yourself, that doesn't mean that you're a bad person or that you're lying or misrepresenting yourself to people. There are certain things that I'm not going to do here that I would say with my friends. And it's not because I'm lying to my audience here. It's just, there's different relationships you have, and plus there's other things like terms of service and shit like that sort of you don't want to run afoul of. So, but if I'm talking to you and you're my neighbor, like I talk to my neighbor, it's going to sound a little different. I might be like, fuck these stupid ass lefties, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to say that necessarily on stream like that. I'm going to give people more of a benefit of the doubt, etc. So it's difficult then to say, when you're talking like about Trump's personality, I think that Trump, less than most people, is who he is. Like, what you see in front of the camera, it's got to be frustrating as shit to be the people, like, on his team, like, his handlers. Like, okay, man, you just had an assassination attempt against you. You got to play up the sympathy, right? Don't go out there and be like, Kamala's stupid. Joe Biden's old. He's got dementia. Be magnanimous, right? It's a time for healing. Right?
Go up there.
But he can't do it. He can't do it. He's got to go
I don't
out
think
there.
he can cry, to be honest.
And so you're like, oh, that's frustrating as shit for the game of politics. But for the authenticity of the person, I think that it's sort of refreshing that it's like, this is who Trump is. That's just who he is. And yes, there's this showman-like aura to him, which is true. And it comes across sometimes as like a TV character or something. But I think that's like who he is. He's lived his life like that for so long. That's who he is. And so, I liken it to sports. I don't know if you're a fan of any particular sport, like professional football. Do you watch any professional football?
No, I do reading and esports.
Yeah, see, a nerd. Okay, well, even like video game sports, whatever the hell they call it, right? There's certain things like when there's certain.
I
things,
can't, dude. It's
whatever,
video game sports.
I'm an old man. I'm 40. I still play games from here.
I'm 27. You're only like
listen.
half a generation on me.
Tonight, I told my 3-year-old son and my wife, when I'm done streaming, I got to be done at 7:45. After we eat dinner, I'm going to whoop both their asses at Mario Kart. So it is on tonight. It's so, and I'm ruthless. I don't leave my 3-year-old win. So
I destroy my children.
Right. That's right. I'm cheering for him to take second place, but he ain't taking first. Not happening. So, anyways, any of these like competitions like that. When the press interviews someone afterwards, we know what they're supposed to say. So I'd imagine esports is similar. So if you're on like a Counter-Strike team or something, I imagine if they're like, hey, Danny on your team really dropped the ball there and he screwed up, what do you say? You know the answer that person's supposed to give. They're supposed to say, hey, it was a team effort. I could have done better. We're going to put this behind us. We're going to work on going forward. We got a big match coming up. That's the way it works in football, baseball, hockey, like all the shit I would watch, It's, that's what they're supposed to say. But every once in a while, they'll interview someone that says something unexpected. They'll be like, they dropped the ball. They fucked up. I told them they needed to...
In League of Legends, a couple years ago, there was...
You still there? I lost you. I didn't kick you. But
There was probably Starlink. Starlink got tickled by the government or something.
Oh, there you go.
Anyways, in League of Legends, there was a team that had a really bad game, one of their members in particular. And after the game, they were doing the interviews, and every single one of his teammates just clowned him, like flamed him super hard. And it made like viral news in the league story for like a week until that player on the stream was like, "Yeah, I told my teammates to say all that stuff."
Yeah, that's
He's
kind
like,
of funny.
to get
Yeah,
attention.
that's funny. Yeah, but what I'm saying is though, like in general, we're like, it sucks that everyone just gives these canned fake answers. But then when someone gives an answer that's authentic,
and we're like,
how
can you not give the canned answer?
Right, you can't say that. And that's sort of how I look at politics with Trump. Like, we're like, we know what he's supposed to say. But then when he says something different, everyone's like, well, you can't say that. And it's like, why not? Why can't you say that? Isn't that more authentic? If, in general, you ask most people, would you like a president to be as open and transparent about what they really feel as possible? Most people would say absolutely. But then when Trump does it, they're like, well, no, you can't talk like that. And the truth is, I don't think Trump's any more vindictive or more of an asshole or more corrupt than the average person in his position in Washington that's in a high-level political field or a high-level economic field. I think that most of them are probably all unlikable dicks. That's how they get to where they are. I happen to think Trump's probably more likable than most of them, but I'm biased. And so it's interesting to me to see the negative representation he gets. Is he really different than he was when he was running The Apprentice? Why was he so liked? Why wasn't he a racist, bigoted sex pest then? It's almost like his political agenda of going against these institutions is what the difference was. Now, all of a sudden, it's a big thing. So I do have to let you go. There's other people in the line, but I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation.
How do I get my dad on here if you agree? Like,
if he doesn't have Discord, if he wants to call in, I have a Google Voice. Oh, he does? Okay. Then just convince him to come on. I won't be an asshole. I'll be reasonable. Oh, the other person that was waiting left now, but that's all right.
Is there a particular way to, like, how do I recontact you or whatever?
The best way to contact me is my X feed, which is just Rob Noor. Yeah, and then DM me. I got my DMs open, so I check that every day. The problem with Discord messages and shit, sometimes I forget to check it. The same with I get so much spam and that in my email account that I might probably the chances of that or
on X.
Yeah, X would be
the
the
best almost
place.
Nobody.
Well, yeah. See if you follow me on X. It's just Rob Noor. I'll put the link in the for all my places. But if you prefer email or something, you could send it. I just can't guarantee because I get emails that are spam all the time that look legit, like a person's name. And then
I'll just DM you on X. My name is the same here as it is on X.
Excellent. So yeah, go ahead and DM.
Do you want me to just pitch? Should I just pitch it as a radio show?
Yeah, you could pitch it as a radio show, or even if he wants to talk to me not live, I could give him like a half an hour. It doesn't have to be something recorded or live if he just wants to talk about it. But I wouldn't mind that at all. But I think it would be good live, and I'm not going to be a dick. I'm not. It's not like I'm going to be like, you're an idiot. You're brainwashed. I'm not. I'm going to be like, because I do agree with him. There's things not to like about Trump, and that he exaggerates and is prone to things like that a lot. So I'll take that all seriously. I'm not going to belittle it, but I'll give my best interpretation of what I see, and I think it would be entertaining for other people to listen to as well, as long as he wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I'll talk to him about it and see what he thinks. Hopefully he wants to. He likes talking about politics. So.
If not, you could this video will be up on my channel, and maybe my editor will even edit this section of me talking to you specifically. So if he does that, it'll probably be up Monday or Tuesday, and he could just check this video out and watch this part of it if he wants to.
All right.
So.
Well, thanks so much, Rob.
All right, you take it easy, Rome. We'll talk to you soon.
You too.
Bye. All right, let's put the call up there. I'm sorry, I know I was on with that caller a lot. I saw that I only had one person in the queue, so I thought I had more time. Reminder, hard 7:45 outro tonight. My wife is convinced I can't do it, which she is right to be convinced of that, seeing as how I'm never done on time. I always say things like, 5 more minutes, and then I'm here 3 hours later. So she's right to be skeptical. But we're going to try our best tonight. So yeah, we're still taking calls. All right, we got someone on the hook. Just kidding. I almost banned you. Just kidding. I almost hit the wrong button. That would have been terrible. What's happening, Just?
Oh, hey, can you hear me?
I can't. You're a little echoey, but I hear you.
1 second. It's a little quiet. I'm gonna boost up the volume for a second.
No problem.
All right, here we go. Hopefully, did you say something?
Nope.
Oh, well, I can hear you now at least.
Okay.
So. Beautiful. So long-time listener, and I know you kind of like veered away from, I guess, talking about some of the more contentious issues, not in like in like a strategic way because we're before the election cycle. Namely, I'm talking about stuff like January 6th, right? And I know it's like it's more of a framing because you see it, you're on the back end whenever you talk about these types of things, because bringing them up is essentially kind of moving away from more pressing issues that are like in current times, and it's pretty much putting the Trump narrative on the back end, and basically arguing from a back foot. But I think you do have like some really good arguments that could probably convince some people away from those positions that you've kind of shown off before. And I know you're probably not able to convince as many people, but I've kind of seen it more so. Really, I've been following Connor counterpoints for a long period of time, and he's kind of the perfect example of what I kind of see as like I've got a feeling that he's, I don't know if it's right to say motivated by the money or anything like that kind of stuff, but like he just falls back on those what about it towards the January 6th stuff and all this other crap, because I think he's being inundated with just the one-sidedness of working with those progressive victory pack. But like I've seen you argue before, and there have been like really in-depth details where you bring up like fact by fact by fact, and you've actually like disproven a lot of the narratives that have come out between like you and arguing with Destiny, etc. And what actually I think might be useful is like compiling some of those instances in which you do that kind of stuff. Like one of the best examples I can think of off the top of my head is like with the Hillary Clinton Comey investigation, where he always says, "Oh, it's unusual for them to bring this up." Like you talked to Destiny like 3 times, and every single time he goes, "The reason that Comey did it was because it was some like biased against Hillary Clinton." And then you go in the Mueller report, you can literally read the document and it says this is my reasoning for doing it. And I think lately, because Destiny's been getting worse at debating, you being able to pull those things up can force him to do more things like rage quit out of the conversation. And when you have those moments like him rage quitting out of the conversation, or you pull up like him being told this in the past and saying like, "Oh, but this is the reason why I think it now," it kind of puts on full display the bad faith that some of these argumentation tactics have been used like in these conversations. And if you build up like a little bit more of those like records, I feel like you should be able to convince more people by just showing them in plain English and in their own words, "Hey, these are the things we're looking at." Perfect example. I haven't read.
No, it's fine. I don't disagree. I think you're right. Like, so I understand there is a lot of things I talk about. The Burisma thing would be one of them. The sort of Russia investigation would be one. The mid-year exam versus Crossfire Hurricane. And then the January 6th stuff, where if I had time and the ability to edit, if I sat down and did like a big 4-hour stream and, put together all of the facts in a way, I think it would move the needle in some extent. But there's 2 problems with that. One is that I'm a really bad editor and I'm really bad at preparation as far as prepping a particular show like that. I'm good for prepping a debate, though it's been difficult because I'm working so much now. But as far as like setting up a show like that, it's just not something that I'm necessarily good at the technical aspects of doing it. The talking's fine. I could do that. The getting the sources together is fine. It's just the presentation aspect of it. And also, you kind of made the point there that at this point, would I be doing more good to put a lot, like 20, 30 hours into something like that? Would that move the needle other than things that I think that are more pressing? Because what I'm saying is, it's a defensive position. There's no one that's going to vote for Trump because of January 6th. There are people that will vote against Trump because of January 6th, and it is possible that I could reach some of those people and say, "Listen, it wasn't as bad as you've been led to believe, and let me talk you through how this went." And I think that I could reach people like that. I do. But would my time be well spent trying to reach those people by presenting a video like that that's taking me hours and hours to do versus how many people I could get on board talking about sort of the ideas of the people that are representing the Harris campaign represented things like lying to us about lockdowns, lying to us about the border, lying to us about Biden's cognitive abilities, lying to us about sort of policies they had in places like Afghanistan, Ukraine, etc. I don't know how much it would move the needle. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't people that shouldn't be putting stuff together like this. I think Mike Benz does a tremendous job putting together material in a way like you're suggesting when it comes to the idea of what he calls it's the blob, these institutions that are censoring the First Amendment, censoring free speech online. I think he does a tremendous job. It would behoove us to have someone that's doing a great job on things like January 6th, on things like Russiagate. And I think that I would, with the amount of time necessary, I think I'd be very good at it. I just don't have the time. It's unfortunate. It comes across organically when I'm debating someone like Destiny because I have the information in my head. I might not have the exact line in the Mueller report where that stuff's at, but I know I've read it because I read the Mueller report. I read the IG reports, But I do think you're right. I think that there is some effect that I could have. And that's why I like debating someone like Destiny on that. And that's why I wanted to debate someone like Pisco on those things, because my intention is to debate the people that have an audience that are supposedly that's their big issue and that they're the best at debating that. And that's how Destiny sells himself. The January 6th, he's making this whole dossier. And so I said, yeah, I'll talk to him. I talked to Sitch from Sitch and Adam about sort of the alternate electors. I wasn't happy that it was on P.F. Jung's. I thought P.F. Jung sort of wanted something different out of it than what I was trying to get, but neither here nor there. P.F.'s cool. I don't mind it. But yeah, I think that there is, Connor, I've talked to him about this stuff. I don't know. I think Connor just hates Trump and is looking for an excuse, and the money probably doesn't hurt. And so they're blowing January 6th out of proportion. The reality is, we just saw today an article from City Journal that came out that Democrats are saying, there's a host of Democrats already saying, if Trump wins, they're not going to certify the results. I mean, I guess that'll be the litmus test. Do you think that Destiny and them are going to say, this is outrageous, it's an attack on our democracy? No. They're going to say, well, it's a legal challenge. And then it is what it is. They know they're making a mountain out of a molehill to try to make it to seem, they know that there was a transition of power. And there's all sorts of specifics on that they don't want to answer these specific questions. If they really were concerned about the day of January 6th and about things like alternate electors, then they would have been concerned about the FBI interfering with illegally spying on Trump's campaign. They would have been concerned about the riots that we saw that would also be deemed insurrections based on their very definitions. They didn't care. They don't care about any of it. And one of the things they're very good at is being hyperbolic and controlling the narrative. And so it convinces a lot of people in their audience like, oh, this was this unique, horrible, terrible situation with no excuse. It's a man who's a dictator. It's a threat to democracy. And then you add in, and the Supreme Court's on his side. And they basically gave him carte blanche to do whatever he wants as president. He'll be God, emperor forever. And you can see how that hyperbole leads to a very strong argument of why you have to reject Donald Trump. But the truth of the matter is, Trump's sort of just doing things in a more ham-fisted way, but it's things that the other side intends to do fully when they get the opportunity. And let's not forget the Time magazine article from the 2020 election that a shadowy cabal fortified the election for Joe Biden. I mean, they make this argument. Pisco, I've got him to admit, he admits fully that he believes that 2020 was not just there wasn't enough fraud to steal the election. He says it was quite literally the most secure election in history. That's laughable. It's absolutely a laughable position. And so when you start from that default position, it's easy to see, well, anyone who disagrees with me and thinks there were things that were covered up or things that need to be investigated are monsters. It wasn't just, we don't really see proof of that. It was the most secure ever. So, yeah, I mean, you can see when you get into this, I think that the best example of this is in my last debate with Destiny on this. He makes the point, because they can't just argue that January 6th was an insurrection. They have to say that Trump engaged in the insurrection. That has to be the argument. And so when you ask them for proof, like the Colorado court that wanted to take him off the ballot, the evidence they give are like, well, his tweets, his speeches. When he says fight like hell, he means use physical violence. That's what he means when he says fight like hell. And so I asked Destiny, I said, okay, when he tweeted out, as the Colorado court case brought up, thank you, Defund the Media, for the raid. I really appreciate it, man. Great name, by the way. We should defund the media. We're talking a little January 6th here. When Destiny says, oh, yeah, when Trump says fight like hell, that's what he means. He's the president. He knows what he's saying. He knows there's not a legal remedy. He knows that their voting won't change it. So at that point, he means fight is violence. And I say to him, okay, well, in this particular tweet here where he says, Mitch McConnell's not a fighter. We need more fighters like, I think he says Rand Paul. So you're telling me that he was telling Mitch McConnell to literally strap up the gloves and start beating ass? Well, no. Do you see? Do you see the absurdity of it? And he doesn't have an answer to that. He's just like, he just asserts, well, that's clearly what he meant. And it's very convenient because they start under the assumption that Donald Trump's this evil monster. And so we could read his mind. We always know what Donald Trump's thinking, and it's always the worst possible thing. So even when Trump says be peaceful, they know he means be violent. And when Trump says colloquial things like fight like hell, that we could see Republican and Democratic politicians over and over use that phrase, and never once do we say, oh, they're talking about violence. With Trump, we know it's violence. And when Kamala Harris says, well, let's promote a bail fund for people that just, in a city where a bunch of rioters just burned down a police precinct, they say, well, we know she really meant just for the peaceful people. The peaceful people that were arrested? Yes, just them. And so you can sort of see the absurdity of those positions. And as you dig through it, even the alternate electors thing, I find it to be, thank you, Defund the Media, I appreciate it. The alternate electors things, like when you say, well, this situation's arisen in Hawaii in 1960. No, that was different because this time there was a fraudulent slate. Well, what makes a slate of electors fraudulent? Well, what makes it fraudulent is they weren't certified by the governor. When the Democrats set their slate of electors, and I think it was 1960, when they sent it in 1960s, they were not certified by the governor. They ended up being certified after a recount, but at the time they were sent, they were not certified. That would mean thank you so much, Marcy, for the follow. That would mean by definition, those were fraudulent at the time. And that those people, had the governor never changed his mind, by all accounts, should have been held criminally accountable. But no one even suggested it. No one suggested in Democrats in 2016 that said that they weren't going to certify the results. No one suggested that they'd go to jail or that they be criminally investigated. No one suggested when people were attacking the White House and they burned down buildings outside the White House and rioters trying to get in, and Trump had to be moved to a bunker, and Joe Biden came out a couple days later and told Trump to go back to his bunker. No one suggested that that was Biden inciting a coup against the president of the United States. And all of these things occur in a vacuum where it's difficult to get a word in edgewise when these people are just screaming, January 6th, alternate electors, January 6th, alternate electors. And when you get a chance to actually debate them on it, you can see what happens. Destiny says, yeah, I'll debate you on this. But I want to, I say, I'll talk about the definition of insurrection. We talk about it for near 5 hours. I say, as long as we talk about how I think there's a double standard and how it's employed. He says, sure. And then after 5 hours, he rage quits. After 10 minutes of talking about the topic that I wanted to talk about. And that's the problem. They're not interested on trying to look at this through the lens of, well, let's look at it through the lens of, we understand that both sides try to do things that maybe we would even consider immoral, attempts at lawfare. He's not looking at it like that. It's pure hyperbole for them. They don't give a shit. It's about winning. And so they're trying to scaremonger people because they know that they can't run on the issues. Right now, the Hippy Dippy's having a panel show where it's like the crew that does like Pisco and Econoboy and Pondering, that they do a show every week. Those four are debating Lactoid, I think Kevin Castle and some others, on like J.D. Vance and blah, blah, blah. I can guarantee, like when I debated basically that crew on the Hippy Dippy 3 weeks ago or so, I can tell you right now what's going on. The left is saying Trump's a threat to democracy, January 6th. J.D. Vance said he wouldn't have certified the results. Oh my God, democracy, they're traitors. They all need to be locked up in prison. It was a coup. Insurrection. That's it. Because they lied to you about how great the economy is doing, how great the border is doing, how great foreign policy is doing. They can't run on the record. They know that. And the irony is, even if they had a point this time in 2024, which they don't, that Trump's this unique threat to democracy, it's the same shit they said about him in 2026 and 2020, or 2016 and 2020. Oh my God, he's going to lock up all the gay people. He's going to kick all the brown people out of the country. He's going to do this, that, and the other. And then we saw what 4 years of Trump was. Mostly benign. The economy humming along. Not really any major wars that were going on. Border relatively secure. That's what it was. It was kind of boring. Remember the big news stories? Russia. Trump overfed those koi fish. Remember that? Trump eats 2 scoops of ice cream. He eats 2 scoops! Holy shit! That was it. That was the big... and so it's the same old playbook. And what I think, like the last caller I was talking about, I think the irony is listen, I made no bones about it. I wanted Vivek as my man. After that, I wanted DeSantis. Trump was a third place for me. I would support all 3 of them, but that was the truth. So I didn't get who I wanted in the primary, but I see so many of these DeSantis people and they make this point. They're like, well, If DeSantis had been the nominee, he'd be winning in a landslide because he's less extreme than Trump. He's more controlled. There wouldn't be enough ammunition. No, they would just paint him as more sophisticated Hitler. That's what it would be. There's no going away from this. You see them doing it with J.D. Vance. Oh, he's just Trump. He's more insidious because he's more well-spoken. But he's really engaged in a coup and blah, 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 blah. Same shit. There's nowhere to go. And guess what? Whoever the nominee will be in 2028, same shit. That's what it's going to be from here on. Just like with Mitt Romney, it was binders full of women and return to slavery, putting black people in chains. Same shit. That's their playbook. So they're full of shit. I know this is a long-winded answer, but I do think you're right that, there is some utility in me putting together like an actual video of all of this stuff on January 6th. I guess in lieu of that, what I tried to do was put myself up against theoretically the best opposition and try to make those arguments in a confrontational format so people could judge for themselves. And I do think it had some inroads. I think there are people like you and maybe even a lot of people that were predisposed to agreeing with Destiny on this that were like, I didn't look at it that. Like, how many people know, the Capitol City Chief's son of his testimony, where he's basically like, look, the Sergeant-at-Arms Paul Irving that answered to Nancy Pelosi, I routinely called and requested the National Guard. And he was like, I got to run it up the chain. And up the chain was to Nancy Pelosi. And they wouldn't let me use it for optics. And it took 3 hours. How many people know that? Look, I understand that their agenda with the January 6th committee was really just about getting Trump. But on paper, what they said was it was about seeing how the failures of that day occurred. Then why don't they give a shit that Paul Irving lied under testimony? Where he said, first time that Son called me, I gave him permission. Son's got the receipts. He called him like 14 times and was denied 13 of the 14. Then, once he was permitted the ability to request by Paul Irving, the National Guard, he was then denied again by the person that was like a general or a lieutenant general. Again for optics. Now, I'm supposed to believe that all of these people knew that there was an insurrection occurring and yet said, though, we have to leave it go because if we tried to stop it, it would look bad for optics. And none of them give a shit about that. They don't give a shit about the discrepancies in the pipe bomber story. Don't give a shit. The only thing they care about is how can we connect this to Donald Trump? That's it. That's all they care about. Now, did Trump act perfectly that day? I don't think so. I think there were things he should have done better. But the idea that we're going to say like, ignore all of the crazy shit that we heard occurring that day, ignore the fact that we're being told by the IG, we can't tell you if there were FBI assets that were in the crowd. We know there were. By the time the information comes out, the election will be over. It'll be done with. They won't give a shit. They'll say, who cares? It was a coup. It was an insurrection. Who cares? Time to move on. Just like people like me in real time, when we were arguing about Russiagate and the illegal spying, we were called conspiracy theories. Oh, it's bullshit. They have proof that Trump illegally colluded with Russia. It's such a big deal. Oh my God, illegally colluding with Russians to get dirt in your opponents. It's such a huge deal. And then we found out it was true. There was collusion to get dirt from Russians on a campaign opponent, except it was Hillary's team. No one gives a shit anymore. Who cares? I remember one time I brought this up on a panel with Brianna Wu and Destiny literally said, that's a long time ago. Now his entire fucking format's talking about a day 4 years ago. That's his entire political strategy 4 years ago. But when it came to the corruption of the FBI going against Trump, or the double standards, well, that's a long time ago. And that is their strategy. Deny it's occurring in real time, and then later when the evidence is there, they're like, it was a long time ago, time to move on. Same thing Pisco says. When we talk now about the illegal spying on the Trump campaign, you know what he says? It's regrettable. That's it. It's just regrettable. That's all. And by the way, James Comey's not there anymore, so what do you want them to do? It's regrettable. It's over with. Time to move forward. But, God forbid you suggest, well, hey, now Trump wins, right? Maybe he should compile a dossier and use it to spy on his opponents. Oh, my God, that would be outrageous. That'd be outrageous. No, we'll just do it and then say, it's regrettable. Moving on. No consequences, right? That's the standard. That's the standard set forth, right? They know the double standard. They know. They don't give a fuck. All that matters to them is winning. And you can see it today. They're all freaking out. Oh my God, Elon Musk. Can you believe that he's such in favor with Trump? I thought the conservatives were upset about that. I thought they didn't like social media weighing in. Right, no shit. They're not censoring near to the level that Jack Dorsey was the people that are oppositional. It's just that the owner is coming out and saying, hey, I support Trump, I support free speech. And they can't fucking handle it. Because what they really want is the standards to not apply to themselves. They should be allowed to do anything they want to you. The FBI should be allowed to do anything. Social media should censor you, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes to that shoe being put in the other foot, how dare you? So if Trump does win, get ready for an assload of 4 years of them bitching and demanding investigations about, we demand to see what Elon Musk, how he put his thumb on the scale. We demand investigations. We demand to see. I thought conservatives didn't want social media putting their thumb on the scale. And we demand, like, oh, is Trump trying to censor people? Is he trying to have disinformation center? We demand to see evidence of that. We demand. That's what it'll be. These same people that told you those concerns didn't mean dick all when people like me were raising them, all of a sudden they're going to say, oh, this shit's super important. And the mainstream media is going to be on their side, and the FBI will be on their side, and fucking all of these academia will be on their side. It's just laughable. I'm so tired of playing their game. And, so I don't know. That's sort of my feelings on, should I compile something theoretically about January 6th? Yeah, it would probably be a good idea, but I'm not going to do it because I don't have the time. And at this point, the election's so close to being there. I tried my best to give a good faith talking to the people that the left considered the best on this, talking in their environment with their moderators, with them controlling the topic on their shows. I thought I did very well. People like Destiny fucking rage quit. And, I hope that the audience sees that. They could cope about RobGPT or I bullied AI or whatever the fuck they want. It's just laughable cope. Everybody knows it. It was literally 2 minutes of the whole debate that meant nothing. It's just fucking cope. That's all it is. So, I was happy to do it, but it just gets frustrating to me because what happens with the January, I guess what I was really saying when I'm talking, what happens with something like that is every Destiny clone in the world reaches out to me. He's like, I want to debate you on January 6th now. I want to debate you. And if I took all the offers that I got on January 6th, literally my show from now until the election would be debating another person on January 6th every fucking night. And it's not going to be anyone that's as good as Destiny or Pisco. It's just going to be random Destiny clones that want to call in and make stupid talking points that they've heard Destiny or others say. And so at some point I just have to put my foot down and say, like, look, I'm not going to leave you people control the narrative. I talked on your stage for as long as you wanted. Find someone else that's willing to let you control the conversation for 5 hours. It's not going to happen. And so you could all cope now and call me bad faith or running or whatever. I'm fucking tired of it. I'm going to talk about the issues I want. None of them wanted to. I couldn't get them. In fact, they would goad me into panels, and we're going to talk about Russiagate. Oh boy, I'd say I'm ready for this. Then they would say, actually, no one had an interest in that, so we're changing the panel to abortion. That happened to me once. It's fucking laughable. It's like, oh, okay, they don't want to talk about the issues I want to talk about. So, on my show, I try to talk about the issues that I enjoy talking about and that I think move the needle. And at this point, relitigating January 6th, I don't think moves the needle that much, even though I think I'm right on the issue.
You said a lot there. I'm going to make 3 points if you don't mind.
Yeah, I know. If we were
lot.
debating, clearly I would have let the back and forth go. But
Oh, no, not a debate. It's just, you said a lot, and so I had observations while you were talking. So, sorry about that. So, one of the ones I was thinking of was, you were talking about the RobGPT thing. You said, one of your big highlights is showing the whole fight like hell portion. But I actually think there was a little bit more hidden in there. And the reason why Destiny ended up going with the RobGPT stuff is because he's a little bit lazy nowadays when it comes to gathering information. And so you were actually able to, in that debate, use his own documents in order to disprove him on multiple occasions. And what I've noticed is Destiny doesn't like to be wrong, ever. If he accidentally slips up and says, the word cat in a sentence, he'll pretend he didn't say the word cat in a sentence. He'll just gaslight the audience and pretend he can never do wrong.
Well, and
so
and on that point, real quick, no, someone sent me a clip. I don't watch Destiny's show very often. Sometimes if there's a specific thing and I'm bored, I'm cleaning the house or something, I'll put it on the background. But people send me a lot of clips. In fact, some people send me clips that aren't even fans of mine. I think they're fans of Destiny because they want me to react, so then Destiny could react or some shit. I don't know, because drama sells, I guess. But I had people send me clips of Destiny talking to Pisco after that, and maybe I still have the clip somewhere, but one of the things he said was, what he was really pissed off about me for was pretending I knew more about the sources than him. And isn't that exactly what you're saying? He's saying he was pissed off that the documents that he was using, that I was pretending to understand them more than him. But I was. And I'm fully admitting to everyone, I haven't read through all of these. I got a full-time fucking job. I was literally working for 11 days straight, got off work, texted Destiny, said, you want to talk about this tonight? He said, yes. So I didn't have time to go through it. And so when he says things like, well, I read the Bowden Paulson and it says there can't be state-level insurrections. And then I'm like, yeah, it does. I think it does. And then we go through it and it says it. And then when we're talking about the Colorado decision, I say, look, they specifically said we're not taking a definition of the term insurrection. He doesn't fucking know that. And even Pisco said, yeah, Destiny didn't read this shit. Now, of course, Pisco has to backtrack on that because he needs to kiss Destiny's ass. That's where his audience comes from. But he knew it, and I knew it, and everybody watching that's trying to be objective knew that Destiny, who spent all of this time on this shit, he doesn't know what he read very well. He's looking for the points that he wants, and so he gets pissed when someone like me that's fully being upfront about the fact that I didn't read through a lot of this shit. It's not my big issue, and I work full-time. I'm not compiling a dossier on this specific topic. I'm someone who just got off an 11-day shift who's willing to fucking talk to you about this, but even I know the base level of what this shit said, and I think you're misinterpreting it in many ways. That's why he was pissed. And when he rage quits at the end, he was pissed because I was right about that Colorado decision. And so he just kept repeating himself because he was frustrated that what I said was correct. And even Pisco admitted afterwards, like, Destiny, I don't think you read this. And he's like, blah, 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 blah. That's why he rage quit, because he was getting frustrated. And he had to keep going back to that as well, because he didn't want to talk about the double standard and how that's being applied. So I completely agree with you there. That's why he got pissed. And he needed to retroactively have an excuse for why he rage quit. And so his retroactive
even
excuse...
past that, you went even further into the court case documents, and you showed that one of the source material documents for it showed that just having enough people in force meant that it was a threat of violence, or, not a threat of violence, but it was a means of, I think it was
insurrection,
restricting freedom of speech or insurrection.
Correct.
Yeah,
That would have
something
been
along those lines. And then he went on to even try and argue that the term "in force" meant using force, despite anybody can go right now and look in the Cambridge Dictionary. In force means a large number, right? Anybody can go do that.
That's right.
And so what's happening here is, like, he knows he's getting deported, and so he has to kind of go back and rewrite history. And I think, like, having some of those clips where he argues these, like, incredibly ridiculous claims would be good. I mean, you could probably go back and, I think you were talking about the border wall stuff. But I think he's made arguments to you in the past talking about, like, how even the notion of having a border wall, and Pisco's not immune from this one either, is a xenophobic practice. So now that Kamala Harris is the one actually advocating for border wall policies and enforcing the border, does that make her automatically xenophobic? And so, there are more things that you can just get these little things, clips of people saying these outrageous positions.
I know, and especially, I lose sight. Oftentimes I can remember if it's a one-on-one debate, but I forget who says shit when I do panels. And, it's interesting because, like, Pisco and his crowd, they got a whole crowd of people that go through my old videos and try to find, like, I'm like, I didn't call the Black Lives Matter people an insurrection. They found, like, one example of me in, like, 1,000 hours of streaming using the term insurrection one time. Good on them, I guess. I said it one time. Great. But I don't have that. It's just me, But I do try to bring up this shit. Like, again, the point I was bringing up on the last space call I did with Destiny was, it's laughable to me to see him on his moral high horse about sort of the idea of MAGA has no right to talk about, things about assassination attempt because they supported this insurrection and blah, 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 and how violent and terrible that is. When I first debated Destiny, it was like day 4 of the Floyd riots. He told me that rioting and violence were the other side of the coin to voting. Now, I've told him that several times when I talked to him. He said, I don't believe I said that. Then he fucking goes back in that space. He mutes me on his video and goes back because he's like, I didn't say that. And then he sees he actually said it. So now he has to come up with the theory of, like, well, this is why I was justified in saying that. And it's like, no, bullshit. And Pisco has to try to run defense for him, and it's their show. I understand it's the nature of that show. It's going to be multiple people, ganging up on me. I don't give a shit about any of that. But it's laughable. Like, and that's one of the things. We all do that. We all say things that slightly contradicts, but Destiny's saying things on a big level. Like, political violence, this is so disgusting. Oh my God, it's disqualifying. And then, actually, when the political violence is on my side, I think it's the other side of the coin to voting. That's a huge gap. That's different than saying, okay, I've slightly changed my mind on what an insurrection is. Or Destiny says, originally, when January 6th happened, clearly wasn't an insurrection. It was a riot that got out of control. You can see the video. If they were really trying to, harm members of Congress and shit, they overwhelmed the police, they would have done it. And now that changed too. This is one of the biggest attacks on our democracy ever. Like, how do you get that? It's almost like because you see the political expedience in it. And so you're right. If I had more of an ability to go back and clip the statements that people have made, and there's tons of them. There's tons of, like, go back and look at the debates I was having with people on COVID. I mean, it's fucking outrageous the shit people said back then. And now here we are 4 years later and people are like, I never said that. And it's like, I know you did. I can't pull it up because I don't have time to go back. But I remember you saying it. I can't definitively say it because I could be wrong. My memory's not infallible. But most of the time, I'm pretty good. And you can see a lot of times in my show, one of the most frustrating things is when I'll be debating someone in real time and they'll say something and then I'll argue against it and they'll say, I never said that. And I'll be like, yeah, you said that like 5 minutes ago. No, I didn't. And I'll be like, okay, let's go back to the tape and see it. 95% of the time, I'm right. And so you're right. Like, there's a lot of things that they say that if you had the audio of it and then you could re-bring it up later, I think it does make it effective. But the problem of that is you almost have to have a team because it's difficult as one person to. So I'm always for if anyone's ever like, hey, Rob, remember when Destiny said this in a debate? Or oftentimes it's not even when they're talking to me. It's like Destiny did another show and he said X. You know, and so when he's talking to you that he never said that, bullshit, here's the clip. But I almost never have time to find it for myself, and it's difficult to just dredge up as many debates I've done and people I've talked to. It's difficult to dredge up. Oh yeah, I remember when I talked to you that I was on that panel that Connor was hosting. You said X. Destiny, it's a little easier because most of the time that I've debated him, it's either been one-on-one or it's more memorable. But I feel bad. People calling like, remember I debated you several times on Hippy Dippy? I'm like, oh, no, I'm sorry. I don't remember. And I'm not trying to be an asshole. It's just I probably debated 200 people or something online at this point. So,
But I guess to hammer this home, I think the best example of you being able to put people in weird positions is actually, I'm not sure if you saw, Cisco arguing against me, my friend. I think I've been seeing the chat that was happening live, but I'm not sure if you watched it or not. But
I've seen parts of it.
It was such an interesting thing because I think due to the past arguments that Pisco had with you, he had to either put himself in a position in which he was lying or come out up front and say, here are the weaknesses of my position. And then when you're talking to like another rational human being who hasn't heard your argumentations before, and they hear this caveat, this caveat, this caveat, this caveat, and they go, wait a minute, you're saying there were these actions, impropriety, like actions done by the president's son, potential blackmail material, all of these criminal cases, these events happening in sort of, you admit to all of that, and you're saying there was no problem, no, you're just an insane person.
Yep.
And they get to dismiss them out of hand. And that's because of the position that you put them in when you force them to admit, I recognize that this happened, and this happened, and I still hold my position. And it's like a net positive for society when you get to dismiss insane people out of hand.
One of the things I try to do when I'm debating is I always remember that it probably won't be my last interaction with whoever I'm talking to. So oftentimes what I'll try to do is set something up for the future, right? So I'll ask questions like, so hypothetically, if we would find out that the FBI didn't verify this information before they used it to get a FISA warrant, would you think that's a big deal? And someone will say, sure, but that's not what happened. Okay. And then a year and a half later, it's like, well, that's what happened. Now what? Well, right. Now all of a sudden it's changed. And so I'm always trying to do that. I'm always trying to be like, well, look, if this is, or Black Lives Matter, I was like, okay, if you think that this is the other side to political voting, if the right decides to engage in an act of political violence, you'll say, hey, no big deal. That's the way the game's played, right? That's what you'll say. And so I do try to set that stuff up. And I agree with you. I think Viva obviously is not going to know the past statements of everything Pisco said, but it is important to get online, to get those sort of admissions out. Now, it's another thing entirely to go back in the past and find, like, for example, if I wish I had the clip, I could probably dig it up where when talking about, I'm pretty sure it was on a panel that Connor held, and it was about the classified documents case of Trump. And the topic was, is this a big deal or is it an example of a double standard by the FBI? And so I was like, oh, it's a double standard. And then Brianna Wu and everyone was fucking, well, this isn't the topic. It's not the topic. Oh, I'm sorry. This isn't the topic. It's not the topic that was given you. Okay, Brianna, it is the topic, as Connor said. And I believe at some point in that debate is when Destiny said, this was so long ago, who gives a shit? And I would like to see the date of that debate versus how long ago we found out about that shit. Versus how long ago January 6th was from now. Because I bet it's less time. Now all of a sudden we have to spend every day talking about 4 years ago. But back then, 2 years ago when I was doing this panel, it was so long ago. We don't really focus on this. So, yeah, I agree. I mean, I wish... Look, I say this all the time. I wish there was someone better than me at this. I think Mike Benz is better than me on the specific things he talks about. Or I wish that I made enough money doing this that I could quit my job and then I'd be able to do stuff like that. But as it is right now, that's labor-intensive stuff. And that's one thing I'll have to tip my cap to Destiny for real. He has a very dedicated audience in a lot of them. And so it's easy for them to dig up clips. They could, if you have 20,000 people that are watching you on a nightly basis, it's easy to be like, oh, I'm debating Rob Noor. Let's see what he said. Go through all of his videos. And now I think it's even easier with AI. I think you could use AI tools to like word search on live videos. If I'm not I've never done it, but I think you can. Who am I kidding? Everything I do is AI. So, but yeah, final word. I got to be out here by 7:45. I promised my wife. So.
Yeah, I'll just say this. About 3 months ago, I said 10 exit and you'll be at 1,000 viewers. Now it's only 5 exit. So, hey.
There we go.
Let's try.
I am hoping to get there, and I'll definitely do a celebratory show if I get there. So, thank you so much for the call. Call in next time. Just kidding. Really appreciated it.
Have a good one.
All right, you too. See you. All right, good calls tonight. Didn't get a lot of crazy lefties, but that's okay. All right. Sorry if I didn't get to a lot of people in the chat. I do want to read the super chats real quick. Abject Fool for $10 says, the scary thing about philosophical worldviews, which we all have, is that one could hold that someone should be unalived, and that is good, and the possibility of it being bad is an impossibility. Yeah, I agree. If you really believe that Trump's Hitler... Ginger is Prime for $5 says, ask Destiny one question. If he lived in the USSR or China, how would he know if the institutions were untrustworthy? He would trust them, is my guess. Yeah, he would claim that he wouldn't, right? Like, for example, all of these institutions are trustworthy until they're not. Now, all of a sudden, the Supreme Court's corrupt. So we can't trust them. Why? Well, because they didn't go the way he wanted. So to say, well, we have to trust all these institutions, except the one that was a bulwark against what I wanted, then... So, all right, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to make it on time. My wife's not going to believe it. So, hope you enjoyed the show today. There's a chance I'll stream tomorrow evening. Not sure. We'll just play it by ear. I do have some family stuff going on during the day. Sunday, it's my sister who started college. She's 20 years younger than me. It's her first concert. She's going to college for band, and I'm going to go watch with my mom and my wife her first concert. So I'm really excited about that. That'll be Sunday. And then, we'll go from there. I'll be going into work Monday. I got some back business. I'm getting an injection in my back Monday, and then I go back into work, and we'll play it by ear from there. So let's raid someone real quick on Twitch. I got to hurry if I'm going to get downstairs in time. And we will raid...
Yo.
Let's see. We will raid...
Yo.
Pentuple. Good guy. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the show. Remember, I'm going to have that big 24-hour live stream coming up. We're going to have a lot of guests. It's going to be 24 hours nonstop. Rob Noor, RobGPT, etc., etc., etc. It should be good. That'll be coming up the Saturday into Sunday before the election, so November 2nd into 3rd. So plan on that. Lou Silver, thanks so much for $5. Says, Destiny is the very definition of audience capture. You seem sincere. Let's hope Trump actually wins. Thank you, man. I hope Trump wins as well. All right, everyone. Thanks so much. As always, have a good one.